There is a list of tools that I recommend people use. Copilot is not one of them.
I think the best way to start is from the bottom-up approach, where you train everybody. You basically use the talent in your company to identify the places where AI can help and what can be done with AI.
If you want to be at the forefront of what you do, you want to be efficient, you want to be doing your job the best you can, you absolutely have to use it. There is really good research that shows that it makes people more creative, more productive, but also happier. They enjoy their work more if they can delegate some of the stuff they don't like to do to AI.
I try to sort of demystify AI, because when people learn roughly how it works, then they can understand the strengths and limitations better. It's an incredible tool. I absolutely love AI and how much we can do with it, but I wouldn't agree that it actually thinks.
You can have a very philosophical conversation about what true creativity really is, but you should not have that conversation with an economist like myself. To me, if it walks like creativity, quacks like creativity, I'm just going to call it creativity and move on. My MSc student, when they graduate this year, how much better they are than my MSc students were 3 years ago, just because of the ability to use AI.
Don't you often find that you're typing through a prompt and you're just like, why am I still typing? This is so inefficient. Like, it's obvious what I want to do. I don't believe we'll be using the common chat interface in 5 years' time. We're kind of on this journey ourselves already of wrapping our bigger product in a sort of agent that can spawn the right button. So, you know, if you upload a lease and start working with lease, some buttons about what cool things you can do with leases come out. Welcome to Bricks, Bytes and Bold Moves, the future of real estate. Today we're joined by Nico and Monika, and we're talking about everything to do with real estate and AI, with a focus on training, how you communicate to real estate professionals, how AI works, limitations. We've got some areas we disagree on, like how creative models are that we want to talk through. And we're excited about the conversation. So just as a brief introduction, Nico is director of the Bartlett Real Estate Institute at UCL. And Monika is a lecturer in the physics department and AI engineer and educator. And we're going to start with, I guess, jumping into the area where we have the most diverse set of opinions on, which is how much can LLMs really think and how creative they can be. And I know that Monika is the skeptic in the room or has a particular view on this. So I'd love it if you could start us off, Monika, by explaining your answer to that question.
So AI, especially generative AI that we have access to these days, is quite amazing. And it makes all the appearances of thinking, reasoning these days, creativity, being as good, even better than a lot of humans. But when you know actually what's under the hood, how it really works, it's an equation. And I struggle to admit that an equation can think, right? It's an incredible tool. I absolutely love AI and how much we can do with it. And it can be applied in so many different ways. But I wouldn't agree that it actually thinks. So take an example of LLMs. Their goal is to just predict the next token. And I know that it's simplifying things to the extreme, because the results you can get out of LLMs, especially with reasonings, are incredible. But that's their goal. That's the only thing they do. They predict the next token, they predict the next sentence, the next chunk of text, based on the patterns they've seen in the data during training. And I guess on some philosophical level, we could argue whether this is thinking, whether people do the same thing. But for me, it's incredible, but just a tool.
That's an interesting framing. I do certainly know some people that maybe take the approach of saying the next word is their purpose sometimes, rather than communicating meaning. Nico, I think you have at least a different flavor of view on that.
Yes, so Monika focuses on the process of creating the output, whereas I think that the way a normal academic would approach the question, is it really creative, is you look up the definition of creativity and you compare the output to the definition, and you try to answer by seeing if it ticks the boxes. And you know what? It looks like it does tick quite a few of the boxes. Look, you can have a very philosophical conversation about what true creativity really is, but you should not have that conversation with an economist like myself. To me, if it walks like creativity, quacks like creativity, I'm just going to call it creativity and move on. Now, I think Monika is right in looking at the process, but this is a fine academic question that really comes down to whether or what you think creativity really is. There are studies that look at how humans perceive creativity. So if you run a randomized controlled trial on humans and give them text written by AI and text written by humans, most of them will say that their text written by AI is more creative.
Yeah.
Now, the most creative humans will outperform AI, but an average human will be not as good as AI. So in my opinion, I think AI does an excellent job mimicking creativity, but I don't know what true creativity really is. So I can't really say whether AI is truly, deeply, genuinely creative. It's creative enough for me.
Right, yeah. I guess it's the sort of process versus outputs. Monika, the way I sort of boil down your argument is one of maybe purpose, because the purpose of the model is to predict the next word, essentially, and that is not a purpose we would normally associate with intelligence, i.e. the purpose of someone writing something is normally not to write individually a word at a time, it's to assess risk or big portfolio investment or communicate to a friend. Is that a good way to distill it, or?
I'm not sure, because intelligence is also something that is defined differently depending on the context.
Yes, that's true.
And
true.
In this case, artificial intelligence has a very specific meaning, right? Intelligence means ability to learn. So AI are algorithms that are learning from data. And in this sense, they are intelligent. I would never say they are not. But I know that different people define intelligence differently.
Yes.
So the purpose there may be, of course, one of the questions
when you
ask.
get into defining metacognition and stuff like that, which is a hot topic in our team right now and across the world, I'm sure. But I think one of the things that we're talking about this debate, I think that definition of kind of intelligence and creativity is difficult, makes it difficult for people in the industry to follow the conversation and kind of come up with useful mental models of what AI systems can do. For example, I know I've spoken to lots in the past who've kind of taken the approach, well, LLMs just predict the next word, so they can't help me with any hard tasks. I.e., maybe I can extract a piece of information from a document or get a summary or something, but I couldn't get help kind of reasoning through my investment hypothesis or understanding risk of a particular portfolio. Do you agree with them or disagree with them? Or a third way?
I would say I would disagree, because if you just want to extract pieces of documents, you don't need AI. You need some simpler machine learning algorithm. And I think everybody, including the people who wrote and trained the first big LLMs like GPT models, were quite surprised by what they can do.
Yes,
because especially before the transformer era, we had a lot of natural language processing models which did produce some text, and they were very primitive in how they predicted the next token, the next word, right? But then with the transformers, it's sped up so dramatically. The self-attention mechanism brought so much into the performance of the models that it actually started mimicking thinking. It could grasp the sort of long contexts, the correlation and the relationships between different sentences, pages, or documents. So I wouldn't say that it's too simple to do a complex task. What I wouldn't admit is that it actually thinks, or it still needs a lot of guidance. It's still created by people. It's not conscious. I think that's where I draw a line.
Yes.
So
Okay,
it's very powerful, but
let me be a little controversial here. And I'm going to say that LLMs, the goal of an LLM is not to predict the next token. It's to predict the next token in a way you like. And as an economist, I study incentives. And if you provide the right incentives, you can achieve truly amazing things. So if you think that an LLM just produces the next token and therefore cannot help you, remember that everybody who works for you just wants to make money. They don't care at a very fundamental level about your business, about the growth of the economy. For the vast
That's
majority,
a very economics-based view of teams and businesses, Nico. But we can let it pass.
there is a large amount of research that supports what I say. And of course, people can have more than one objective.
Yeah.
But the purpose of work for the vast majority of humans on the planet is to do other things that they want with money that they make. And yet, employing humans has proven to be amazingly useful. So if you provide the right incentive to a large language model, you can get amazing output out of it. Now, you still need to be able to judge the quality of the output and do something useful with it. But as Monika keeps saying, it's a tool. And if you use it the right way, you can get a lot out of it. So it's not just predicting a random token. It's predicting the next token that you will like, that will be useful to you. And I think that's a point people very often miss.
Interesting.
That's very aggressively reinforced in a lot of the training data as well, right? Particularly the sort of training that happens after the raw model is built.
Yeah, reinforcement learning.
Things helpful and safe and useful.
And that's what's a big part distinguishes the models and their behaviors. So why Claude behaves differently from Gemini or from GPT-4.
We have a sort of general internal joke that it's very difficult to manage Claude's natural insistence to please you and to say yes. And I feel like anyone who uses any of the AI tools and has kind of gone, no, I don't like that, or that's wrong, and then got the immediate like, oh yes, I am totally wrong. Here is what I agree with you. And it's actually, I guess from a systems perspective, it's quite interesting when then you get into a world of like, well, actually, we want a tool that will disagree with us and challenge us and not just turn around. And then it becomes a more nuanced experience, right?
So this is a really important comment. A lot of people I speak to don't really understand that on top of the system prompt that they don't usually see, or many of them aren't aware of, there's also almost an inherent personality of the model that comes from the design and of the training data, that it's just model specific, and it makes some models different than others.
Yeah, I agree. It makes one models lazy and uncooperative, and others too eager to please. That sort of reinforces the feeling that they're humans, or they behave like humans, that they're more than an algorithm, which in some cases I guess is good if that's what you need to work with it efficiently.
But I also think that it means that different models are good at different things. Now, I don't know if it comes out of the personality, because the way we've learned that different models are good for different things is because we've tested. I don't know how correlated the personality traits of different models are to how good they are at different tasks, but different models can do things differently and behave differently, and we don't really understand why, because this is something that we find or discover ex post rather than try to get those models to do.
It's starting to change, but yes, mostly. There is still there was a comment, I think, last year that even if AI development stopped today, we'd still have at least a decade of exploring and
I said it this morning.
Did you?
I keep saying this. I think it's very true. So we are still just scratching the surface in terms of
if we just stopped, if the models just stayed the same today, the amount of innovation and creativity, and I really think, especially in like answering that question of how do you create an experience where you're managing an AI workspace or agent versus, clicking on a desktop and opening Excel and typing stuff in? That user experience and like how you package it and how you surface all the right information is totally up for grabs, and I think has years of innovation.
I think
I don't believe we'll be using the common chat interface in 5 years' time.
What do you think we will be using?
Well, if I knew that. Well, so I actually think for me, something much more adaptive. Like if you can essentially trivialize building a user interface, like if building a website is possible within like half a second and it's exactly what you want, I think that gives you don't need to interact with something just by typing into a text box. It can be more responsive to what you want, your context, your needs. And so maybe you can be clicking buttons and dialing things up and down, or maybe there's some context of your awareness. It can be surfacing the right information. I mean, we do some of this. We're kind of on this journey ourselves already of like, wrapping our bigger product in a sort of agent that can spawn the right button. So, if you upload a lease and start working with lease, some buttons about what cool things you can do with leases come out, about whether it's extracting particular information or a data extraction or something like that.
But it's use specific, right? So it's very specific to what you're doing. And I think because AI is a general purpose tool, the chat interface may be transformed into a voice chat. But I think the chat interface is useful because it will direct you to different places where you need to go to do certain things. And I do agree with you that there will be personalized dashboards and specialized functionalities for specific tasks. But I don't see how you can design a user interface that will cater to everybody and everything.
Well, Apple will do it.
I think though, like, don't you find that? I mean, I know both of you spend a good amount of time using chat-based tools like ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude, and you're very, very well versed in them all. Don't you often find that you're typing through a prompt and you're just like, why am I still typing? Like, why am I still going? This is so inefficient. Like, it's obvious what I want to do. Can you help me out here?
So this brings me to my next point that I think most people miss about prompt engineering.
Yeah.
Because, of course, it's a controversial skill or controversial ability, but I think, both agree that there is a level on which you do need to interface with the machine. Like the context that you have in your head, the objective, the task, you will always need to be able to somehow translate it into something the machine can understand. At the moment, you say, why do I still type? I don't. I prefer to use the voice interface. Yeah. It's a lot easier for me. I'm dyslexic, so typing is hard. But for many things, typing is still the way humans communicate with each other and speaking. And suggesting that there is a better way is very philosophical. I don't know. This is the best way we found that we can communicate. Is there a better way? Maybe.
I think partial solution to that is memory of AI, right? If you can accumulate context over your history of chats, then you have to write and type less and less, or say less and less, because the model will know your preferences. They will have the information that they absolutely need to produce the output you want. But to some extent, you always have to give the command. I think in this case, it's useful to think of AI as an actual human collaborator to whom you also have to explain a lot. But the longer they work with you, the better they know you, the more they can assume correctly. But you still need to give them the instructions. You still need to give them the to-do list or ask them to do things. So there's always an element of communication present. Wouldn't you agree?
I think, look, the context that you need to explain every time, to me, makes the pre-existing instructions only of limited use. Because I always find that the context of different chats that I use is so different that I just prefer not to use custom instructions at all. because the chats are so different. It's just speaking to very different people and pretending to be a very different person. Sometimes I'm pretending to be a specialized academic. Sometimes I'm pretending to be a 3-year-old child and trying to learn something. So it's different. I think that the context is one of the two main limiting factors in us using AI more efficiently. It doesn't have the context. 1 million tokens you get with Google is a lot, not nearly enough to capture everything that we'd like those models to understand. So the context window and the interface with other tools, other applications, other humans and other systems are the two main limiting factors that make it extremely unlikely that we will be able to achieve AGI by just scaling up LLMs.
Oh yeah, and for me, this isn't about AGI. This is about kind of how we interface with machines. This is very much my product. This is very much from a sort of user product perspective here. But I guess if you think about it, like today, let's say you might every Monday morning, for years, you might write a brief update of what's happened in the New York commercial property market over last week. And a few years ago, that would have been a few hours of Googling, and you've got newsletters, and you'd review them all, and you manually type them up. Then you might have kind of sent some of those articles to a chatbot and kind of been like, hey, summarize these. Today, you might say, it might be a deep research workflow, so you might use ChatGPT or another tool, and then run that every day. I guess for our users, we're at the point where we would schedule that for a user to run every Monday morning, so it's there. But in a world where, and this is, I feel like, really close, where there's enough intelligence and it's cheap enough that you could anticipate that the user is going to want a report every Monday morning and maybe change it a bit based on context. That summer holidays, no one's around, so it's slightly different to peak deal season later in the year. I think it's that kind of anticipation that we have, and that kind of, if you've got all this intelligence available to your system and you can change the experience of the users as a result, I think that's where we'll see big changes. So chat becomes exception handling, more technical users, and kind of background, rather than the core primary starting point for your interface.
Okay, but how do you get information that this has been done for you? Do you get it via email? Do you get a phone call? You still need...
Well, so again, I'm very attached to, it depends on the user. That I think all of our, today documents information is very rigid, getting much less rigid. Like, we've got ChatGPT's latest image generation skills, for example, suddenly make generating images that look like marketing adverts, basically, with text and everything in, much, much easier and more available. But still, if you have all of your information about a block of flats, it's probably in PDFs, spreadsheets, Word documents, and maybe you might write a presentation about it. But in the not too distant future, you should be able to consume that information in whatever format you like. You can already do some of that today, right? So you can use Google Gemini to create a podcast from your documents.
So that's really interesting. Increasingly, not necessarily in sort of the traditional real estate, so retail or office, but when I speak to people in hospitality, that's where they're going with their customer experience. Mm-hmm. So basically, you book, you check in, you go through the hotel experience the way you want. Yeah. You check whether the room meets your requirements. You book all the additional facilities in a way that you find useful, whether it's on your phone, whether it's through voice, whether it's on a website, whether it's through booking.com. You choose the way that works for you, and they want to adapt. And they use AI for that as well. So I think that's kind of where you're going with this. Is that right?
In part, yeah. And I just think what will happen is the tasks that we do will get atomized and turned into repeatable tasks. So, for example, if you're reviewing citations, like a bundle of citations, is that different from looking at a list of comparables and property comparables? It's a bit different, but maybe there's a pattern of like, we'll create a better user experience for checking all the sources of data and the kind of links in a quick and effective way. So, and I think all of that builds up into a very different way of interacting with our machines that's not just talking to them, although that will be a thing.
Yeah. I mean, LLMs, in essence, are natural language processing models. So that's what they do. They process text, right? And everything and the other functionality has to be added on top of them or connected to them. And the possibilities are endless.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Which I think is the system part of this as well. Is that if there's anything younger than the core LLM transformer model technology, it's the systems that are built around it to get the best value. And that's really what we mean when we say, hey, if the models all froze, there's this huge opportunity. Because how you add conventional programming, other methods of intelligent computing or predictive analytics into your kind of product or your system can totally transform what you can do, and also deal with the natural limitations of the raw models.
No, I completely agree. And there's a very fundamental way in which people interact with AI, which is what we are trying to promote.
Yeah.
Then there's the next level, which is what you do, which is taking it one step further and delivering capabilities that most humans are not able to do themselves, but still need.
Yes.
So it's something they intuitively know, hey, AI should be able to do this for me, but I can't get AI to do it. Please, can somebody come in and help me?
Yes, yeah. I can see the possibility, or
yes.
the thing that I think I see a lot of is like, I did a little bit of this once, or I got kind of, I try to do this piece of work and 1 in 20 times it's perfect. But why is it 1 in 20 times? I don't understand. I want it perfect every single time, which is understandable. I think, Nico, your views on adoption being easy and accessible are probably contrary to certainly what most kind of technology and innovation teams in the industry tasked with adopting AI would think.
No, of course. And don't get me wrong. I don't think that adopting AI is always an easy and pleasant experience. It definitely, absolutely can be hard, expensive, and time-consuming. And historically, it has been.
But you think it doesn't need to be hard, expensive, and time-consuming?
Yes, I think it can be cheap, easy, and enjoyable.
How? What's the magic answer?
Well, so the way I think about this is there are 3 ways of adopting AI at organizational level. So you can have a top-down approach. An example of this would be, for example, Hilton, maybe 7 years ago, they used AI for their revenue management systems. And it was expensive, slow, difficult process, hugely successful, hugely profitable.
Yeah. I'm imagining a sort of centralized data warehouse team working on top of a data warehouse doing fancy predictive analytics.
And they had to develop everything from scratch. But they did it. They did it really well. It works extremely well for them. So this is the team of executives speaking to domain-level experts, explaining to them what they need to do, investing time and money into the project, and then deploying it over years.
Yeah.
So that's the slow, difficult way. Then there is and this is top-down, right? It comes from the executives. There's another way. Somebody within the organization would say, hey, there is this problem. I know AI can solve it. Why don't we find a startup that can come in and deploy AI to help us solve this problem? And an example of this would be, well, one example would be what you do.
Yeah.
An example more people would find relatable is, for example, Maersk, the Danish shipping giant. They deployed AI for negotiations. So they use generative AI for negotiations because they have a huge portfolio of negotiations that happen in parallel. So using AI doesn't outperform individual humans on specific deals, but across the portfolio, it gives them great results.
Yes,
so they got a startup to come in and deploy this for them, works extremely well. And then your clients are also very happy with their solutions.
Of course,
and would be an example of somebody in real estate that says, look, AI can do this for me, and the problems that you try to solve are problems everybody in real estate has.
Yes, yeah.
So this is an example of something that it can really easily be solved by AI. Doesn't require a top-down expensive approach. You can just ask somebody to come in and help. And then there is a third way, which we are really excited about, which is everybody using ChatGPT or a similar piece of software.
No one ever starts with Copilot when when they say that.
I can't believe Copilot is not better.
Yeah.
I genuinely wish it was much better. I think there is a list of tools that I recommend people use. Copilot is not one of them. That's all I'm going to say about Copilot. But they sort of using those tools is incredibly impactful on a personal level, and this aggregates up to an institutional level as well. But this is the kind of bottom-up approach that we're very excited about because it's very personal. Everybody can feel it. Everybody can get excited about this. But there's really good research that shows that it makes people more creative, more productive, but also happier. They enjoy their work more if they can delegate some of the stuff they don't like to do to AI. So there are different ways of adopting AI, and they're not mutually exclusive. Monika pointed this out to me, that it's not that you choose one and then ignore the others, because they all have limitations and they have capabilities that aren't substitutable. So at the end of the day, you probably, if you want to be AI-oriented company, you need all three. But where you start is up to you.
And I think the point is that I think the best way to start is from the bottom-up approach, where you train everybody, because that allows you to fully grasp the view of the company, where your limitations and strengths lie, and you basically use the talent in your company to identify the places where AI can help and what can be done with AI. And this is usually much more effective than top management sitting down and thinking about what could help in the company. So as a start, this is a cheap, easy and fast way, because the training can take one day. And then you have everybody in the company knowing roughly what AI is and how to use it.
I think we love working with teams that are already using other AI tools, because you normally, part of our I guess broader service is helping people on that journey, as you can expect, and you can start so much quicker when especially when you've got the kind of team leaders or heads of or MDs that have engaged with some kind of AI tool, because they've kind of got a feeling for limitations, they've been thinking about use cases. And so we can kind of get them to what I would think of as the sort of bigger payoff, more advanced things, more, bigger chunks of workflows being automated, harder problems being solved much quicker than when we're starting from scratch, where you sort of have to step people through. You run in this spirit, you run a real estate AI course that is quite generative AI focused. Is it specifically generative AI in real estate, or do you not distinguish?
It is focused around generative AI, although we do different variations of this course, and some of them include machine learning as well, especially for forecasting. But the main course is called Practical AI for Real Estate, and that's exactly what it explains, what it teaches. So we try to equip people in real estate with tailored and ready-to-use knowledge and skills to use AI in their daily jobs.
And who do you work with? What's your typical persona to come on the course?
So it changes over time. At the beginning, we started working with research teams within real estate. So maybe 3 years ago, people that were interested in taking the course were mainly people that worked in research.
I feel like researchers have often been given the, hey, can you just go and do some innovation on the side, please? You like learning about stuff, right? Like, what's going to happen in the world?
They were also usually the ones that were first aware of AI actually being useful and available. And data analysts and researchers, yes.
Our first ever customers were research teams, actually, funny enough. So we have a very similar experience.
I think
all that writing. I remember one of our customers said to me, I'm good with numbers but terrible with words, which always stuck because it's the opposite way around to what you hear from most people of like, words are fine, numbers are hard.
I think it's what you hear from most people. Us being academics,
Well, quite,
it's the opposite. Monika's a physicist,
Yeah.
so you can imagine that most of her colleagues are the exact opposite.
Yes.
And in economics as well. So numbers are fine, words are hard. But I do find that there are professions that have already been disrupted quite significantly by AI, software development, legal research, creative writing, professions that have already been impacted quite heavily. And real estate research was at the forefront of seeing exactly how things were changing. But it's also where most of our network is concentrated. So these are the people that we knew, and we spoke to them and said, look, this is what it can do. Maybe you should invest some time and money into learning.
What do you think?
And it was an easy sell.
Yeah.
And increasingly, we now work with other people who are managing assets, portfolios, negotiating, more senior people who are starting to learn, and they start to recognize that this isn't going away.
Yeah.
And it is very impactful. I mean,
so I think of that as like, so that's the sort of the people responsible for the core business. So like acquisitions, portfolio management, asset management, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. The other day we ran an in-house course for a team that was basically all sector-specific leaders for a large pension fund, because they've all realized that this is something that is going to change how they work.
So you don't, I mean, we sometimes come across real estate executives that are kind of, I would say their general vibe is, yeah, I love AI. All of my junior team uses it loads. And then they give me the same thing they've always given me. So you wouldn't advocate that approach?
I don't know. It feels like...
does everyone need to understand the technology?
Does everybody need to use a computer, a calculator? These tools right now...
I mean, there are quite a lot of real estate leaders that still do their comments on paper and handwriting, right? We often get asked, if we scan a presentation with scribbled notes on it, can LA update the presentation? Can your AI update the presentation? And the question of course, is how good is the handwriting? And the answer is always very, very, very bad.
I guess the tools are there.
Yeah.
If you're not using a computer to help you improve your business, then I guess not using AI is something you can get away with.
But you couldn't do business without email, for example. Like,
Yes,
so the question is, are we talking about a technology that is as ubiquitous and as universal as email?
I don't think it's going to be something you absolutely have to use if you want to survive, but it is something that you have to use if you want to be good at what you do.
Yeah.
If you want to be at the forefront of what you do, you want to be efficient, you want to be doing your job the best you can, you absolutely have to use it. I wish I could show you just how much better my students this year are than my students were 3 years ago.
When they start or when they finish?
They start in September.
No, I mean, sorry, you mean your students at UCL, not
the graduating cohort. Yes, so my MSc student, when they graduate this year, how much better they are than my MSc students were 3 years ago, just because of the ability to use AI.
Oh, now, really? Is that true of physics as well?
It's more complicated. Physics. In general, there is a lot of improvement, especially in my programming classes, where suddenly all my doc strings are very elaborate.
I bet,
full. But AI is still developing, and it's still not at the level, no matter what people tell you that it's a PhD level. In physics, it still hallucinates a lot.
Yes,
so it's much more difficult for the students to trust AI to use it efficiently. But for coding, definitely for writing up, yes, absolutely. And they use it, and I do see an improvement. Plus, my emails, the emails I receive from students this year are much more legible and much more polite.
Oh, well, yeah.
Look, it's incredible that you no longer have to read broken English, pages and pages of broken English. It's all really nicely written, really nicely explained, and it just makes your job much easier.
It's interesting because I'm used to the narrative of like, oh, homework is ruined, coursework is ruined by AI, and so it's really nice to hear what I would intuitively believe to be more true, that there's this opportunity to use AI to be a better student, to learn faster. And
Absolutely, it's like using Nico's analogy. AI is a tool. If students use it, they'll get better, and we should teach them how to use the tool rather than ban it and expect them to. Nobody would expect my students now to handwrite their reports.
yes,
They can use a computer, and we don't complain that, oh no, they'll forget how to write by hand. We are focusing on advancing their skills and taking the opportunity to produce better reports, because now they can save time by typing.
It's so funny you should say that, because the other day I noticed that the calluses on my fingers I developed from holding a pen at school have just gone.
oh wow, that's quite
It
incredible.
took, what, 20 years?
And I think the same is going to happen to other skills that we developed that we will stop using. We
Yeah.
will replace them with other skills. But I think handwriting is a good analogy.
That gave me a flashback to school as well, because I was the last in my class who was allowed, because when your handwriting was neat enough, you could transition from pencil to pen. I don't know if you had the same thing. And
Not in Poland, no.
I was the last in my class to transfer to pen. And ever since, I've really loved fountain pens, but only use it for task lists now.
So I think there will be a time when everybody uses AI, but I think we are already at the stage where if you're a graduate from an MSc program at a good university and not using AI, you are far behind people who do.
Yeah.
And now I do admit that the graduates that we produced this year, they don't really understand the quality of the stuff that they produce. They don't really understand why the stuff that they give us is so good and why we are so impressed, because they take it for granted.
Yeah, they're just like, why wouldn't it be this good?
And this is something that worries me. We are moving away from teaching our students at UCL how to do stuff and focus on what to do and why.
Yeah.
Because these are the important skills. But the how increasingly is being outsourced to AI.
Yeah. It brings to mind a study I was reading a while ago that was essentially saying that if you got students to use AI as a coach for their homework, it improved their performance in exams massively. But if they used AI to do their homework, then their performance dropped.
Exactly. It's all about the way you use it.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of research on that, that to effectively learn something, you need to retrieve the memory from your memory, the knowledge from your memory. So if somebody does your work for you, homework serves this particular purpose to go back to what you've learned in classes, to apply it again, to retrieve it from the memory, to strengthen the neural pathways. So if you use AI to do the homework for you, you don't do that. You don't learn effectively.
Yeah.
So obviously you won't learn.
You need that friction.
You need that. You need that effort.
So I know part of the real estate AI course is teaching non-technical real estate professionals some foundational knowledge about artificial intelligence. Now, I'm sure we've had the benefit actually of Monika coming in and working with our commercial team. As we expand our team, we want to keep their expertise high. And I know you can't condense all of the learnings into 30 seconds. But what are the highlights? What do people come away with that's the sort of one thing that sticks in people's minds, do you think, from that kind of session?
From the technical session?
Yes.
Well, so what I'm trying to convey in the sort of technical session, the introduction to what AI actually is and how it works, is that it's a immensely complicated equation. For people who understand regression, I explain it in regression. But I try to sort of demystify AI, because when people learn roughly how it works, then they can understand the strengths and limitations better. And then they can also have a bit of intuition about what to do, what not to do, when to use AI, when not to use it, why certain ways of prompting work better than others. So I think that would be my main objective if I only had 30 seconds to convey a message to condense a 4-hour session into 30 seconds. I think I would focus on that because everything else is built on that premise that it's an equation.
It's I think one thing I've got deeply used to, but I really feel people's pain as they're working it out, is how unintuitive what works really well and what doesn't work really well, especially with products that are kind of very much like the raw model. And it's kind of thinking about, I think most people really don't get how they can get this really well-reasoned, interesting kind of risk analysis, qualitative risk analysis, say, of a deal, but then they ask for a calculation and they're like, well, the numbers are wrong.
Yeah. There is a bit of mysticism around AI for people who don't know what's under the hood, so to speak, right? And I think
I mean,
like
sometimes there's mysticism for those that do, right?
That's true. So I like to compare it to quantum mechanics because I wish there was a session like the one we deliver on AI on quantum mechanics that would allow us to understand, okay, but why is it behaving so strangely, right? So different from everything else we knew up to this point. Because AI is different, as you say. It's a new tool that we don't fully understand, probably will never fully understand because of the complexity of it. And it does behave in strange ways. And we have to, the best way we can learn about why it behaves it is to study how it's built and to interact with it to get this experience of getting to know it, so to speak.
I feel like in engineering and software engineering, the trend that is most embracing that is vibe coding, which is, I would broadly summarize as not worrying too much about how the thing is getting done, but focusing on how can I, as quickly as possible, build something by talking or typing. And I think what's really interesting about younger engineers doing that is that, to your point earlier, they don't know a different way necessarily. So natively are very comfortable with lots of stuff happening in the background that they don't need to worry about. Whereas a senior engineer is kind of sweating and very concerned because like, who's going to maintain all that code, frankly. Although of course most engineers are lifelong learners, and so they're somewhere in between. But yeah, who's going to maintain this? How's it going to keep working? I wonder what the equivalent for real estate is for professionals in industries like real estate. Like what vibe working looks like.
So I think for my students and the people that we work with, the key skill is the ability to audit and validate the output. Yeah. Because as long as you can tell whether the output is good, it's useful, or something that needs to be improved in some way, then you can move on and you can vibe work it. I'm
not sure that term's ever going to take off with this industry.
I think
I'm starting late. We'll see. We'll see if we can get everyone in real estate talking about
So I think
vibe acquisitions.
A lot of what junior people do is something that senior people have told them to do, and the way they learn how to do it well is because eventually the senior people start accepting it.
Yeah.
And that's how you learn. Okay, well,
it's
this
like
is
reinforcement learning.
That's exactly what it is. And this is how a lot of junior people learn. And eventually you start learning, okay, why do they say it's good? Why do they like it? Would they like? And I think as long as you can validate the output or somebody else can validate the output for you, you get to learn. And of course, in terms of how it's produced, that's a secondary problem.
Yeah.
And very often it's a problem for somebody else. And I think increasingly young people and people that are focused on outcomes and output are going to adopt the fast and creative way of working, and people who are focused on maintenance and making sure that things are compliant and tidy and auditable, they're going to have a lot of work on their hands trying to maintain the audit trail of how things have been produced. I think real estate...
The good news is they have technology too, though, right? Like the audit trail, it's like it's like the classic sword and shield, right, of like cybersecurity.
Well, I like to
the
think they will be
tools
working
to,
together rather
yeah.
than against
Well,
each other.
I mean, I feel like ideally yes, but certainly in some
Yes.
organisations I've worked in, the collaboration between, say, compliance and the deal teams is
No,
at
of
least
course.
frictionful, possibly in a healthy way, possibly not.
But also it allows people that work using those creative tools to work in a slightly different way that is automatically more compliant.
Yeah.
Because they can understand compliance requirements much faster and much better, and they can ask AI to help them work in a way
Yeah.
that follows the rules they need to follow.
So I would summarize this very much as vibe working is coming to real estate. It's probably already here. Embrace it. Is what I've just heard.
I've always embraced it. I've always, so there are different types
Well, is
of
it that
tasks.
different to how many large portfolio and asset management decisions are made anyway today? So like having spent nearly 20 years now applying data analytics, kind of intelligence-driven decision making, I feel like the results are mixed. Sometimes it's a dinner and a friendship that does a deal, right?
Often it is,
Yeah.
but it's in this industry, it's very often based on intuition as well as data.
Yeah.
And what is intuition? How is intuition different than vibe working? Very
Well, it's an
philosophical.
opportunity to supercharge your intuition, right? Like that's the cool thing, I think.
Absolutely. No. So I think if there's one thing that generative AI can definitely do, is it can help you supercharge your intuition, question your assumptions, have a debate, brainstorm, and discuss ideas with you. If there's one thing everybody should be using generative AI for, it's this.
That's neat. I was going to ask you what the one thing everyone should be doing is, and you've neatly volunteered it. I do think a lot of people don't think of that as the first, like, don't think of the help me think use case as a place to start. But it is, as you say, almost magical in how much it can kind of move you on. And Monika, I always like, I also have that same question for you of what would you want people listening to the podcast to be doing differently, having heard? What's the one thing that you would love for them to take action on?
I would say use AI for what it's created. It's a pattern spotting engine, not a web search engine, not a fact-checking engine, not a mathematical software. So use it for the tasks that are well suited for that, and always supervise it.
Yeah. Okay, great. Well, thank you very much, both. It's been wonderful talking to you.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you.